Now I'm going to say this again because I think it's really important and I really want this to land. Without giving feedback, it is impossible to course correct. Hey there, welcome to Mac TV, where we believe that the transformation from manager to leader is a crucial one and that true leaders change lives. So in last week's episode, we had a pretty deep conversation about leading difficult conversations. And I had mentioned at the end of the video that I wanted to dive deeper into this by talking about one form of a difficult conversation that you would be having regularly, which would be giving feedback. So obviously, like most other things when it comes to leadership, giving feedback is pretty difficult, but it is an essential skill to team leadership. I mean, after all, your role as a manager or as a team leader is to evaluate the performance of your team. So here are just a couple stats to really paint the picture of what the world of feedback looks like in the workplace. So research shows that 67% of people want to have feedback conversations with their manager. But 36% of people say that they rarely have these conversations or that they never have these conversations. So you can see here from the stats that there's this huge disconnect between what team members want and what their managers are actually doing. Now, there are a number of reasons why this might be the case. I mean, it could be because the manager lacks training, so they don't know necessarily how to give this feedback. It could be, poor time management skills. So maybe the manager's like flying through their day and forgetting to schedule these critical feedback sessions with their people. Or more often than not, which I believe it is, it's because they're uncomfortable having these conversations. Because, let's face it, nobody wants to be the bearer of bad news. They don't want to be the bad person. So more often than not, they're just shying away or just not having these conversations altogether with their people, even though they should be. But here is the thing about feedback. Without it, you cannot course correct. Now I'm going to say this again because I think it's really important and I really want this to land. Without giving feedback, it is impossible to course correct. So that means that if your teammate is going pretty hot and heavy in this direction and you don't have the courage to say, I think you need to be going this way, then they might cause a slew of problems in this direction that you later on have to, deal with. So it's better to just get comfortable with it right off the bat so you can get them going in the right direction. Now, there is a lot of advice out there in terms of how to give feedback. And there are a couple common threads that you could see that quite a few people agree with, but there's a lot of advice. Now, and I do want to share some of that with you. But before we get into the tips and strategies and methods, I do want to say something really, really important, which is that it's really impossible to have feedback land or resonate if you don't have a trusting environment. Now, the reason I say that is because feedback, is uncomfortable as it is. It's not something that people necessarily like to hear. And so if there is no trust in the environment, then it's very easy for the feedback to land on defensive ears. And no change is going to happen from that. So it's really, really important that, the team trusts each other. Trust is such a key fundamental when it comes to team dynamics as it is, but especially when it comes to developing a feedback culture. Now, I do have a video that is all about this, all about building trust. It's just a very basic video that shares a couple strategies that will help you do this. I will link it right here and of course in the description below. Now, getting back to the best advice out there on feedback and some of the common threads, number one is to not wait until an annual performance review to tell someone how they're doing. So I'm not really a fan of performance reviews for a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons is because I feel like it lends to unrealistic expectations because maybe both parties have been thinking about something completely different for so long, and then once the performance review happens, the discussion is just not a productive one. So when you are having consistent feedback sessions, both parties are well aware of where, what the expectations are and if that person is or is not meeting those expectations. So you want to have feedback sessions as regularly and as consistently as possible. Number 2 is to make sure that you are giving the feedback or having these conversations immediately. So one of my favorite things is that being unclear is being unkind. So when you wait too long to address an issue, it's really easy for the waters to get muddied. People tend to forget facts. People tend to forget specifics the longer they wait to say something. So that, obviously lends to a lack of clarity. So it's really important that you're clear on what kind of feedback you're giving. And the best way for you to be clear is to give that feedback in the moment or as close as possible to the incident as possible. Number 3, and my personal favorite and something that I am very, very passionate about, is to make sure that this feedback is being given in person. Now, I know that we're living in the technological era, which means everything is email, everything is chat and text. But important conversations should never happen via email, text, or chat. That's just a recipe for disaster. Remember, this conversation is uncomfortable, it's difficult, and you need as much to help you as possible. So what I mean by that is your body language and tone adds to or can affect the conversation. When you send feedback via text, chat, or email, that person cannot pick up on your tone, your intent, your body language. And the same goes for you. If they reply to you, it's easy for you to feel as though they're being defensive because you cannot pick up on intent, tone, or body language. So it's really important that you just have these conversations in person. I mean, if you have a remote team, do it on the phone. Now, before you jump and say, come up with an excuse, which I often did, which was my favorite excuse was, well, I might not see this person for a couple days, so I need to get this done. That wasn't a good enough excuse. It's just not, because the whole intent, first of all, it's my job to give feedback, and the whole intent is to inspire change. I can't inspire change if that person doesn't know the intent of why I'm giving it. My body language or my tone, I might be causing more problems. Now, before you stop me and say, but Makita, sometimes I don't see some of my teammates for a couple of days, and if I don't send them this email now, then I won't get to it. Well, that excuse is just not good enough, and I used to say it myself, but it's just not good enough, because when you cop out, basically, and have those conversations in a form that's not conducive, then you're actually causing more damage than good. So it's just better to schedule out time. You're the leader anyway, so schedule out time to stay a bit later, change your schedule. I don't know what you need to do, but make sure that you're having those conversations either in person or on the phone. And by the way, these conversations don't need to be necessarily formal. I really liked the feedback sessions just by the printer or in the games room or something, just really informally. So you can always do it that way as well. It doesn't need to be a formal 10-minute sit-down discussion. It could be informal as well. Tip number 4 is to give positive feedback. I think every leader should make it a goal to give one piece of critical feedback as well as one piece of positive feedback. Because team members, they need to know not just what needs course correction, but what they're doing well. So it's really important that you make this a goal to give positive feedback as well. Now on to a strategy. So something that I really am excited to share with you is an approach to feedback that I learned in this book called Permission to Screw Up by Kristen Hadid. It's a really good book. I think I picked it up because it was bright. No, honestly, the reason I picked it up is because I heard her on a podcast once and I was like, wow, this girl's pretty brilliant. She has a lot of really good insights. I want to read the book. Anyways, in the book, which, like I said, is hilarious and it's super real, so I'll link to it in the description below if you're interested in reading it. But in the book, she talks about a feedback session that I think will really resonate with you. So she talks about going to this communications course at the Barry Wilmer's Learning Institute. I think it was called Listen Like a Leader. In this course, one of the biggest things that she learned was that most feedback is given in a way that doesn't really inspire change. So they taught her this FBI method, which is all about communicating the feedback in a way that inspires change, which is good because, I mean, isn't that the whole point of giving feedback, is that you want to course correct, like we keep saying? So I really, really resonated with this method. So FBI stands for Feeling, Behavior, Impact. So here is how it's broken down. F for feeling is all about how you feel, not the way that you think the person feels, because of course the two will always be kind of different, right? So when you're giving this feedback, you want to talk about how what they did makes you feel. And the reason why you're doing that is because it leaves very little room for argument. So B, like we mentioned, stands for behavior. And this is all about stating specifically what behavior it is that made you feel the way you feel. So like we mentioned before, being unclear is unkind. So you want to be as specific as possible here so that you do not cause any confusion or misunderstanding. The last piece, I, which stands for impact, is all about helping the person understand the impact of their behavior or actions. I think that most people, I would like to think most people anyways, are not going to work purposely trying to create a difficult situation or, whatever for their teammates. So it's really important that you state how their behavior, their attitude, lack of performance, whatever the case might be, how it impacted you, the team, etc. Really, really important. Because of course, what this does by expressing the impact is it allows them to understand not just the consequences, but just how big of an impact it has, which will then inspire change. So I'd like to give you an example of the FBI method being used in a real life scenario. So it would sound a lot like this. I feel disappointed that you were late for your last 3 shifts, and now I'm not sure that either I or your teammates can rely on you to be on time for other shifts in the future. So in this sentence, I've addressed all 3 things. First, I've addressed how I, as the manager, feel, which is disappointed. I've addressed the specific behavior, which is the 3 late shifts. And I've addressed the impact, which is the fact that now I don't know if me or the other teammates can rely on this individual for other shifts in the future. And I bet they now understand the consequence, which is that they probably won't be scheduled for further shifts in the future. See how this kind of works? So this method is super simple. It's very easy to remember, and I highly suggest that you implement it. Practice it before you go in there, just have the FBI running through your mind before you have this feedback session. It just serves as a really nice outline to make sure that you're covering all your bases. Now, the other thing that this FBI method is really, really good for is for giving positive feedback, which of course is my favorite. When it comes to giving positive feedback, I think that a lot of it is way too general. And I've been guilty of this too, where I'm constantly like, you're awesome, you did such a great job. Well, what is it that I'm awesome at, or what is it that I did such a great job at, right? It's far too general. When using the FBI method for giving positive feedback, you're specifically letting the person know what they did and how it made you feel, as well as the impact that it had. And you know what this does? It inspires them to do it again. And isn't that what we want? I mean, all good behavior should be praised, while bad behavior should be discouraged. So when it comes to this FBI method, I want to encourage you to obviously implement it when it comes to giving critical feedback, but especially when it comes to giving positive feedback. You will see, I think, a whole new world when you do this. So I've had a couple conversations with fellow team leaders who have expressed an interest in learning how to deal with difficult employees. I mean, it's a pretty common thing. And so I want to devote next week's episode to learning how to manage difficult employees. So of course, I don't want you to miss out on that. So you know what comes next. I want you to hit on the subscribe and notification bell so you don't miss out on next week's video. Thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed being with you here today. And I cannot wait to see you in the next video. But in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic week, and do not forget to keep smiling. I'll see you in the next one.
According to Entrepreneur.com, 44% of new managers feel unprepared for their role, and this often leads to feelings of overwhelm and self-doubt. Are you a new manager that feels somewhat the same? Well, training certainly helps. And that's why I've created this free audio training for new managers that serves as a good base to help you develop 3 critical skills that are essential to your success as a new team leader. So come on over to MakitaAndrews.com to grab your free audio training today.